I'm very, very pleased and proud to be up here today supporting this very, very important Labor reform in a long line of Labor reforms over a very short period of time. And I also want to acknowledge the presence and advocacy of the Australian Services Union, Secretary Angus McFarlane, and officials. I don't think Jan Primrose is here, but all of the officials, and I see Helen Westwood is here as well, former member, so welcome and thank you for your advocacy. Also want to acknowledge, I think Sophie was here before, but she's no longer with us, but I want to acknowledge the efforts of the Minister in bringing this to fruition. Madam Deputy President, today the Minns Labor government is delivering yet another key election promise. This bill allows community sector workers to accrue long service leave based on their time in the industry instead of their time with an individual employer. This already exists, of course, in New South Wales for the building and construction industry and contract cleaners. And I might say, Madam Deputy President, on that point, as someone who was brought up in the electricity industry when it was fully owned, I had the benefit of automatically being eligible for long service leave on a pro rata basis based on service. We took those sort of things for granted, but in a sector like this, the community sector, it's so critical that people who do not have the ability necessarily to have long-term tenure with one employer have nevertheless the same benefits and rights as those people who have that privilege, particularly given the value add that they contribute to our community in the frontline jobs of disability, youth, domestic violence and homeless services. Expanding portable long service leave will benefit the community sector industry greatly. Despite working in domestic violence services for more than 2 decades, for example, Christine Smith has not been able to gain long service leave as she has worked for 6 different organisations. This is not uncommon in the community sector. Disability work is known to be a precarious profession with irregular hours and high levels of casualisation. Sadly, Christine could not take adequate leave to support her parents' end-of-life care personally. This may not have been the case if portable long service leave had been available to her. Employers support expanding long service leave, with Flintwood Disability Services Russell Gould saying, and I quote, "This is a really great initiative because it means you can give employees a reason to stay within the disability services industry." And that's what this is all about, Madam Deputy President, rewarding people's loyalty to the industry, not necessarily a transient employer, and making sure that people have an incentive to stay in that industry. The high casualisation of the community sector has contributed to a high turnover rate and a shortage of workers. There has also been a growth of the gig economy platforms and apps in the community sector industry, with some platforms not providing opportunities for leave and reports of delayed pay. This has all contributed to issues with attracting and retaining community sector workers. By expanding portable long service leave, around 250,000 community sector workers will be better off. According to Angus McFarlane, the New South Wales and ACT Secretary of the Australian Services Union, the expansion of the portable long service leave scheme will give community service workers, and I quote, "the recognition and reward they deserve," and help create a more attractive, sustainable sector. Long service leave, portable long service leave for the building and construction industry and contract cleaning industry are all the work of former Labor governments in 1955, 1986 and 2010 respectively. Importantly, this bill has involved considerable consultation with unions, peak bodies, government agencies in New South Wales and around Australia, as well as the public through an online Have Your Say page. I'm incredibly proud that this Labor government is continuing our party's tradition of making real change for workers. The Minns Labor government is just getting started rebuilding these services for the long-term benefit of the people of New South Wales. And Madam Deputy President, I'll just finish up by saying this. In a society which tends to reward disproportionately those who are in the corporate sector and not trying to demean the value add of those people who run big companies or are in privileged managerial positions. But in terms of the proportionate contribution to society's well-being for people like our community services sector, The idea that you couldn't give them a basic and fundamental right to carry over leave entitlements from one employer to the other beggars belief. And again, I just say that thank God for the union movement and unions like the ASU being the transmission mechanism, campaigning on the ground to make sure that when we get Labor governments, we have them act on these things to make sure that society does actually reward and recognise the value add that they contribute to our community. I'm very, very proud to be part of a Labor government that's doing that. Again, I want to thank the ASU for all their advocacy and their campaign, and especially, of course, our Minister Sophie Coxis, who's championed this from day one, doing what Labor governments should do. Thank you.